Hello, everybody. Um, just chatting here today about Fascinating Friday. And today we're going to travel to one of the most remote islands in the entire world, Pitcairn Island, that has a very unique history with a unique culture. So, Pitcairn Island is the location of where the HMS Bounty had a mutiny in 1798. So, you may have heard of Mutiny on the Bounty before. There's like stories and movies and all this kind of stuff about it. And there was a ship um, who sailing on the Pacific Ocean. The crew had staged a mutiny, and so they ended up sailing their ship to Pitcairn Island, and the mutineers stayed there and lived there, and their descendants are still currently living there. And there are about 50 people who are living there. And it is the least populated island in the world. And like I said, they are the ones who are the descendants of the crew from the mutiny on the Bounty. Now, in 1798, there happened to be some indigenous people living there already. So the people that live there today are an interesting mix of the indigenous people that were already there and British citizens who are now citizens of Pitcairn Island. So I want to talk a little bit about it and some of the fascinating facts about living on the most remote island. The island is not, when you think of a Pacific island, and you think of maybe like even like the South Pacific, you would think of a very beautiful tropical island. And although it is in what's considered the tropics, it's not the most beautiful island you've ever seen in terms of like beaches and beautiful landscapes. It is rocky, it is mountainous, it's kind of a really tough terrain, even to farm, it's difficult. It's got some beautiful paths for hiking, which is nice. And the entire island itself is about the size of Central Park in New York City. They really only have one actual beach that you could think of it that way. And like I said, the terrain is a little difficult to manage and manipulate. But you'll notice that the people do have some places that they popped their housing throughout the island. And one of the most fascinating parts of the people of Pitcairn Island is the way in which they use the island to their advantage. Obviously, they are well versed in coming up with different ways to have different resources and make themselves or the island useful for them. They're also very good at recycling items and coming up with clever ways to function as a society. Now, the island is about 3,000 miles away from any continent. So, you have to imagine that resources are slim. So they have a ship that comes about every 3 months to drop off items. So they will make requests with these ships, and it will take them about 3 months to get whatever it is that they may request. So that could be food, that could be items that they need for their housing, for survival, shoes, right? Anything that they need, what we would consider normal, would take them about 3 months to get to them. Now, with COVID, that got really, really tricky, and there's all sorts of articles if you're interested in this that you can check out about Pitcairn Island and COVID. It's been hard for them, and for a while they actually stopped the ships from bringing their items. And then they needed things. So they had to figure out ways to drop stuff off. But then you also have to think about like vaccines, right? Do they get vaccines? Will they be shipped there? Which you already know there's sort of an indifference in how the vaccines are distributed amongst the smaller of the world's populations. And Pitcairn Island has struggled with figuring out how to manage this because it's not something that they've ever had to do before. So you can always look up online and find out any articles about this. But Pitcairn Island has been in the spotlight because of COVID-19. Anyway, it does take about 3 months, like I said, to get anything shipped to them. And so here's a picture of some kids waiting for some supplies to be brought to them. Another interesting and fascinating part about their culture is that many of the people who live on the island are named Christian, because the leader of the mutiny was a guy named Fletcher Christian. And so everybody will have your first name, and then their middle name will be Christian, or their first name is Christian and they just go by their middle name, what their other middle name is. So I thought that was kind of an interesting part of their culture. They have very limited resources for technology. And so the way in which they handle energy and resources for like turning on lights or whatever it might be, they have one very large generator. I love this picture of this guy's like, look at our generator. A very large generator that is turned on in the morning and then shut off every night at 10 o'clock. And because it is a tropical island, typically like temperatures aren't a problem for them. They don't really need so much heat. But even with air conditioning, right? Air conditioning is something that they're not typically in need of because of the winds that they get on the Pacific. So when it comes to temperatures, they're okay. But lights, they do utilize candles often. And I think about that, right? And I think about what life would be like if I only had access to energy at a certain time of the day, how I would manipulate my life, how I would change the way I do things every day. What's amazing is even with this limited amount of technology and resources, most of the islanders live to about the age of 90. So I guess there's something to be said for island life. So islanders have a very unique way of speaking on Pitcairn Island. It's somewhat of a combination of English and Polynesian. And they do have their own language that they created. And they also have a really fascinating accent that's somewhat of a combination of like an English accent and an indigenous accent. They have their own phrases that they made up and ways to speak. So I have this video here that I want to show you that if you listen, when you listen to the way that they speak, it's just really interesting. It reminds me of, if you've ever seen on the Discovery Channel, the Alaskan Bush people and how some of the brothers have a fascinating accent that they developed. It's a similar idea, right? They're so remote from the rest of the world that they somewhat developed a accent and a way of speaking that's unique to their culture. So you can take a look at this video, and then you can fill out your fascinating Friday questions, and then we'll go on from there. Thanks for paying attention. Watch the video and we'll chat. Have a great day.